Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we're going to be continuing with our overview videos with a quick look at the Officio Assassinorum, or the Office of Assassins. Now, this is an organisation in the Imperium which is responsible for the recruitment, training and deployment of elite assassins, as the name might suggest. The Officio's head is the Grand Master of Assassins, and who is a member of the High Lords of Terra. Targets can be anyone from Imperial citizens to Xenos leaders. The Officio consists of different temples, each specialising in its own methods of killing. The heads of individual temples are called directors. Now, assassins are recruited at a very young age, usually from the orphans of the Scholar Progenium, and from the populations of feral worlds as well. They then undergo 10 years of intensive training at the Assassin's School on Terra, and then operate from their temple's headquarters. Their testing and training is severe, with their senses of resolve heightened with implants. Some Inquisitors are known to organise Officio Assassinorum training for death cultists that serve in their retinue, which transforms these already highly efficient killers into much more deadly and honed executioners. The Assassinorum is as secretive as the Inquisition itself, and they regularly operate together. The location of the Officio's headquarters on Terra is secret, and the Master of Assassins is never seen by the Adeptus Terra, so how he attends High Lords of Terra meetings, I don't know. The Grand Master's loyalty to the Emperor must be beyond doubt, as he holds the power that could possibly destroy the leadership of the Imperium itself, and so stringent tests are carried out before a Grand Master is appointed. The ranks of the Officio Assassinorum tend to include ancillary staff, along with astropaths, navigators, and other such servants. Although these individuals are not assassins themselves, they live entirely within the organisation and have no contact with the outside world in order to preserve security. The assassins themselves are divided into ranks, with the senior Lord Assassins no longer able to work directly, but instead being responsible for the planning, organisation, research, and watching over the younger assassins. A great number of assassins are unranked, though some can be more experienced than others. Under Imperial and Mechanicus law, improper use of a member of the Officio Assassinorum is considered treason of the highest order. Because they are considered tools themselves, they cannot be held accountable for their own actions unless they are operating without orders. Now, the temples use many exotic types of equipment and maintain secret vaults of forbidden and alien weapons, giving them access to some of the most advanced technology in the Imperium, although of course the Mechanicum can outshine them for pure destructive power. The history of the Officio is that it was created during a Great Crusade, where a pact was made on Mount Vengeance by 6 Directors Primus of the Assassin Clade, headed by a Master of Assassins. All 7 wore masks and kept their identities hidden. We now know their identities were Sire Vindicator, Sire Aversa, Sire Calexis, Sire Vanus, Sire Venom, and Sire Calidus, many of whom went on to found their own Assassin's Temples. The Assassins were led by none other than Malcador the Sigillite, the Regent of Terra and the Emperor's most trusted advisor, although because his identity was hidden, it was a long time before this information became known. During the Great Crusade, they hunted the enemies of the Emperor, although he knew little of this because Malcador believed that he should maintain his distance from such acts, especially if they were against his own citizens. To preserve their secrecy, only a maximum of 3 agents would be used per mission, and they would only be from the same cadre. Following the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, the cadres of the Assassinorum joined together to take out the leading forces of the heretics, with limited success, and counteract the enemy's own assassins, which worked a little bit better. Now, later on, in Millennium 32, year 546, the High Lords of Terra were actually killed by the Grand Master of the Officio, Draken Vangorich. A strike force of Space Marines descended on Terra in order to remove the Grand Master, and they met hundreds of Aversa assassins. Only 1 Space Marine survived this ordeal to reach Vagorlich and slay the Mad Grand Master. Afterwards, the Imperium descended into a period of anarchy, which it had eventually recovered from, but never fully. Now, during the Age of Apostasy, where Gorge Vandire upset the entire balance of the Imperium, the Officio itself became affiliated with the general corruption of the Imperium, and certain high-ranking members of the Officio were utilised as assassins for Gorge Vandire's own ends. During Vandire's purges, powerful individuals, and even the Officio's Grand Master, became victims of assassins. The war within the Officio became known as the Wars of Vindication, and was only ended by the death of Vandire himself. As you may have guessed, the Space Marines and the Assassins don't get on too well, because one organisation operates under the ideal of honour, whilst the other obviously operates under the idea of secrecy, and neither ideal matches up with the other. In fact, so great is the distrust between them that there is actually rumours that many events within the Space Marines' own ranks, where sudden deaths or sudden destruction of property has led to massive failings within the Space Marine chapter itself, could be linked to assassin temples taking their vengeance on the Space Marine chapter for some unknown slight. Now, the agents of the Officio Assassinorum are trained killers and bringers of death, with specific skill sets derived from their temples. Now, to go through the temples, the first temple would be the Vindicator Temples, who are sharpshooters and specialists in sniping and marksmanship. Now, their speciality is also vengeance and revenge killings, making use of a specifically designed long-range sniper rifle called an Exitus rifle, along with an Exitus pistol and a spy mask with integrated targeting matrix and communications interceptor, which also includes a food and water capsule dispenser for extended operations. They have been known to wait in position for as long as 2 weeks before taking a shot. Patience and stoicism is taught from the start in this temple, and in fact the agents are trained only to use useful words to their profession and pick out specific targets in large crowds. Now moving on, the next temple is the Calexis Temple, who are chameleons, specialising in infiltration and impersonation. Now these are some of the most cunning assassins in the Imperium, as their best asset is the ability to use a shape-changing drug called polymorphine, which allows them, along with special training, to take on completely different appearances, changing their shape and appearance to whatever they need it, be it male, female, or even a humanoid Xenos. This allows them to get close to their target and eliminate them quickly, sometimes even replacing them to sow dissent or even commit further assassinations within the enemy organisation. Polymorphine works better with women apparently, and therefore the vast majority of the temple's operatives are female. Now the traitor Primarch Conrad Kurz, also known as the Night Haunter, was actually assassinated by a Calexis assassin, although it is likely this was because he did not resist the final blow in order to prove his rebellion against his father was justified. Now the equipment they use is usually whatever they can get into the location they are infiltrating, however assassins have been known to use Catan phase swords from time to time. Next up is the Aversa Temple, who are berserkers and drug-fueled killing machines. Now these are some of the most gruesome products of Officio Assassinorum. They are drug-addicted, crazed killing monsters, enhanced by bioengineering and experimental surgical procedures. Their state of mind is amplified to turn dislike for an enemy into a raging hatred, or a wish to serve the Imperium into a suicidal determination to protect it at all costs. They are used as shock and terror assassins, usually against rebellious humans or more civilized Xenos cultures, to undermine the enemy and cause fear in their ranks. These people are psychotic killers, modified and drug-fueled, pushing almost to superhuman levels of combat potential through their drugs, although entirely addicted to these combat drugs, along with the sensation of killing their enemies. They are near uncontrollable outside of a mission, and are kept in special cryo chambers to prevent them from tearing themselves or others around them apart. Now, an Aversa assassin is armed with an executioner pistol, a power weapon, and a neuro gauntlet, along with a suite of drug infusers to keep them alive and focused on their brutal task. Next up is the Calexis Temple, who are actually pariahs and exclusively assassinate psykers. They are one of the more sinister of the Imperial assassins. Every assassin is in fact a null entity within the warp, and their unnatural lack of presence causes a sense of unease in non-psykers. To psykers, their mere presence is terrifying, invoking panic and confusion caused by the fear. The assassin can move in on its target and eliminate them. To pure psychic entities like unhosted demons or other sorts of warp life, they are practically invisible, although of course they do have a presence, especially if the demon is in the physical plane. Now, the Calexis assassins possess something known as the pariah gene, causing their null warp state, and it appears only 1 in every 1 billion humans born, hence why only an Imperium of trillions, and possibly tens of trillions in size, could actually produce a working number of assassins. In fact, the Temple hunts them down inside the Imperium, taking them at a young age and training them in their own methods. They also have vat-grown null-born clones in order to provide a solid operational force, although these vat-born clones have less of a chance of operational success due to their lack of understanding of human emotion. Now, the Calexis tend to operate against psychic entities such as Chaos and Elder forces, as I mentioned. They usually use a relic device mounted on their head named the Animus Speculum, and this unleashes a force of null psychic energy from themselves into the target that drains psykers of their power and sometimes even their life force itself. If they do not die because of this attack, they will then be killed by the assassin's own hand. The assassin also uses a device called the Ethereum to cause emotional distortion and confusion in everyone near them, even non-psykers, which amplifies their own field of distaste, making them very hard to target by anyone who's in close range. Next up is the Venom Temple, who specialise in poisoning their targets. That's about all I know about them, unfortunately. Next up is the Vanna Temple, who are intelligence gatherers and masters of the indirect assassination, usually using analysis and predictions of the future to cause the deaths of their target without ever having come in contact with them. Next up is the Morrow Temple, which was actually developed very recently. Now, these are assassins developed using illegal human, mutant, and Xenos hybrids to create assassins capable of absorbing biomass of their victims to quickly evolve new bioweapons, and killing all targets in a given area very quickly, leaving no witnesses and allowing them to proceed to their next target without being alerted. In fact, there has only ever been one known assassin of the Aversa Temple, known as, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Legion Stracy, who has since been killed by the Imperium as they went rogue. However, there have been rumours that more of this temple exists, operating in the shadows that even the Inquisition cannot pierce, and assassinating targets in such a way that no one ever hears about them. So that's everything I wanted to say on the Imperial Assassins today. Many of you will be wondering where the Inquisition video I promised is. Well, it's because I made the Inquisition video I promised and completely forgot about it, so I do apologise about that. If there is anything more I need to add to that Inquisitions video, it will come up soon, but I just thought I'd maybe get something else out the way before we move on to the Horus Heresy. Next up, I'll actually be dealing with the Imperial Navy, which many of you have been asking about, and hopefully we'll get that sorted out in one episode, and then we'll be shortly moving on to the Horus Heresy. Of course, if you have any questions or comments about the video today, please leave them in the comments section below, or you can contact me personally for a personal message. If you have any other questions or would just generally like to speak to people who are invested in the Warhammer 40,000 lore, then you can go over to the Vox Relay, which is linked in the description below, which will allow you to speak to people who know as much about the lore as I do, if not more, and who will be able to provide you with many answers to questions without ever having to come to me. So that's everything I wanted to say today. See you next time on the Vaults of Terra.